excited to introduce each of our panelists. Let's start off with today's esteemed moderator, who's already on stage, Roger Lee. As Vice President and Business Client Advisor, Roger has been responsible for relationship management and development, as well as loan and deposit generation for our Central Oregon region. As a longtime Chief Executive Officer for Economic Development for Central Oregon, or EDCO, he brings nearly 30 years of economic development strategy, including business recruitment and retention, as well as industry development and strategic projects to improve the overall business climate of Central Oregon. For the past 8 years, Roger has served on the loan committee for Evergreen Business Capital, a lending SBA 504 business lender. He's also involved with the OSU Cascades Innovation District Steering Committee and a board member of the Central Oregon Employers Council. Next up is Dan Kemp, Land Availability. Dan is a Central Oregon native and a top producer at Compass Commercial Real Estate Services. He has consistently brokered major commercial real estate deals, averaging over $60 million annually. As Vice President of Brokerage, his expertise in development, land, business, and commercial property sales is unmatched. He's a key authority on Redmond's market trends, shaped by collaboration on projects such as Deschutes Public Libraries, City of Bend, and the Redmond School District. Today, Dan joins us to share his perspective on the evolving landscape of commercial real estate in Redmond. Please join me in welcoming Dan Kemp to the stage. Next up is Elisa Dunlap, and Elisa is the new Pacific Power Regional Business Manager for Central Oregon. From 2015 to 2024, she served as the Pacific Power Regional Business Manager for Clatsop, Lincoln, and Multnomah counties. In her role, she works on community, customer, and economic development issues within her region, and Elisa develops relationships with stakeholders to find creative ways for Pacific Power to be a partner in the community and with customers. In her spare time, she loves spending time with her family, running, photography, and reading. Next up is Brad Wilson. Brad has over 34 years of experience in the electric utility business, 27 of those years just with CEC. Over that span, his role has evolved from journey lineman to Director of Operations and Engineering to Chief Operating Officer before serving in his current role. Major initiatives during Brad's tenure at CEC include the rollout of CEC's advanced metering infrastructure and the development and implementation of utilities' wildfire mitigation efforts. Brad continues to oversee the upgrades and expansion of the cooperative's electric grid to accommodate the region's growth. Brad also holds an ASOT in Business Administration from Central Oregon Community College. And Brad is a lifelong Central Oregonian married with 3 kids. Next up is Marcus McCloskey with the natural gas. Raised in Bend, Oregon, Marcus has a deeply rooted connection to the city's natural beauty and community. His career reflects on dedication to enhancing Bend's infrastructure and quality of life. With 13 years at the City of Bend Utility Department, he gained extensive expertise in municipal infrastructure and utility management. For the past 7 years as district manager at Cascade Natural Gas, Marcus has led operations ensuring safe and efficient service. As a lifelong Bend resident, he's committed to the continuing of the city's future growth. Next up is Patrick Murphy with Broadband. Patrick has spent 25 years working in technology with an emphasis on the design, implementation, management, and sales of high-performance data, video, and voice networks. He's worked both domestically and internationally and enjoys learning, understanding, and implementing technology that improves communities. He has lived in Central Oregon for 13 years and loves all of the amazing outdoor adventures available right here in our backyard. Next up is Jessica McClanahan with Water. Jessica leads the City of Redmond Public Works Department, which includes managing the city's water, wastewater, transportation, and parks infrastructure, as well as managing engineering and fleet services. Before her current role, she spent time in the heavy civil construction industry and as a consultant resident engineer in both Oregon and California. She's an Oregon native and holds a degree in civil engineering from Santa Clara University.
Well, thank you all again for joining today's panel. I think the question maybe comes up, okay, why are we talking about infrastructure? Well, without infrastructure, the things that were discussed earlier about economy and businesses and so forth just doesn't happen. So it's really the foundation of building our economy and growing it. So thank you all for giving us a little bit of insights, hopefully giving us some information that you maybe not have heard or haven't heard in the news yet, Darrell. So, all right, well, we've got some kind of pre-prepared questions here. I'm going to change it up by rearranging the order just to keep you guys on your toes. So right off the bat, tell us about resource adequacy in Redmond and the surrounding area, and what investments need to be made to accommodate the growth we're seeing today. So Dan, maybe you want to get us started just kind of on what's the employment base? Employment land base here?
Well, so are we doing our presentations first and then the questions, or the questions first and then the presentation?
Dan, you're absolutely right. We're going to do some presentations first, and we'll start off with that question when you're done.
Should I kick that off?
Please do.
All right. Well, so my name's Dan Kemp, and with Compass Commercial Real Estate Services. Unlike Mark Roberts, who was worried about the 5 minutes as far as being too long to speak, you give a realtor only 5 minutes to give a message? I don't know. I'm going to give it a shot. All right. So the first thing I want to do is this is probably something that most of you already know, but it'll be a good reminder. I talk to the end users of raw land on a daily basis, and I'd like to share their perspective and how the development environment over the last 10 years has affected them and changed the state of the development environment. Project feasibility is at the top of the list for anybody looking to do a development. And that's being challenged right now by rising material costs, rising wages, rising interest rates, rising soft costs, and really lease rates that are lagging behind and not keeping up. So when we talk about land prices, first of all, I'm going to only take one sector. The industrial sector happens to be a very active sector over the last decade here in Redmond. And thank goodness for that, because I'll tell you, if you guys didn't double your industrial square footage in the last 10 years, I don't know what we would have done. We're about less than 3% for vacancies in industrial across the board. And so there's just not a lot of inventory. The inventory that gets built, we absorb it fairly quickly. So let's take a look at an example real quick of land prices. We're going to go back 10 years real quick. You can change the next slide if you would. So we're going to go back 10 years. If you developed a piece of industrial real estate 10 years ago, you would have been looking at land prices from about 90 cents to about $3.50 a square foot, with a midpoint right around $2.22. That's or if you go 10 years forward, that same methodology yields a price of $8.05 a square foot. That's 263% increase on land prices. And as you can see, industrial lease rates have also gone up from 35 cents to about 95 cents. And right now we're doing deals between 80 and $1.25. But 95 cent being the middle means that lease rates are not keeping up with land prices. The good news is that's only a small piece of the overall land development. The bad news is it doesn't get any better as you look at the different components. So let's look at the price of construction, hard cost construction, and labor prices. So as you can see across the board, we've had 40 to 60% increases. Lumber, for example, 1,000 board feet used to cost $300. Now it costs $600. Some of you actually think, that's not that bad, because do you remember a couple years ago it peaked at $1,600, right? And then was at $1,200 for a while, so $600 looks like a little bit of a deal. But across the board, steel, aluminum, drywall, all of that has gone up. Construction labor costs more to have somebody go out and build it, right? You got to pay them more because prices have gone up over the last decade quite a bit. So you have a 42% increase there. Let's look at soft costs, because construction costs aren't the only things that go up and down, right? Those do fluctuate. Now we've got soft costs, and I'm not going to dig into any one specifically, just to say that across the board, you've also seen 50 to 60% increases. And we all know that, architectural fees, engineering fees, permits, SDCs, those all go down over time, right? So unlike construction hard costs, soft costs typically don't go down over time. And then the last kind of major component is financing costs, right? So when interest rates go up for development, that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's a double impact. Number one, you're going to have to pay more for the debt. And then the second thing is that cap rates, which determine the value of a commercial building that's leased out on an income approach, those don't work as well, because cap rates, when interest rates go up, cap rates go up, there's pressure on cap rates, and that has a downward pressure on value. So your stabilized value of the project after it's all done, that you just spent more to build, is actually worth less. So interest rates definitely have a big impact. You can go to the next slide there. Okay, so let's just look at a really quick industrial pro forma to prove the point here. So we're going to look at a 10,000 square foot industrial building built on about 3/4 of an acre. So we're going to take 30,000 square feet at that $8.05 a square foot. So we're going to spend about $241,000 on the land. And then we're going to look at building an industrial building. And I've got $250 a square foot to build an industrial building. And some of you are probably like, well, wait a minute, can't you build an industrial building for $150 to $170 a square foot? If you don't have any offsite improvements, if you don't have to pay SDC fees, if you don't have all the other development costs that go into it. But industrial buildings are going for, when you look at the all-in cost, $250 to $300 a square foot when you look at everything. So if you take the lower end of that, $250 a square foot, you spend $2.5 million on a building and about $250,000 on land. So you've got about $2.75 million into it. Then you run an income analysis and you say, okay, I'm going to lease that at the end of the day for $1.25 a square foot. Not the 95 cents I said was the average, but we're going to take the high end and we're going to say $1.25. And then we're going to look at that at a 6% cap rate. Now, that's a below market cap rate. Nobody wants to go borrow money from the bank at 7.5% and then buy a building that's putting off a 6% return, right? That doesn't work too well. So we're going to use 6%. Somebody could argue it's more than that, a higher cap rate. That yields a value of $2.3 million. That's a shortfall of about $400,000. And a lot of you go, well, Dan, you just said we've done a ton of industrial development over the last 10 years. How's that possible if you've got a shortfall? Well, it's possible when interest rates are at 3% and you can just a 5% cap rate, which means your stabilized value is a lot higher, right? You can justify it when your construction costs are 50% of what they are today. You can justify it when, all of those costs across the board make a heck of a lot more sense. And so what I'm not saying is that industrial demand in Redmond is drying up. That's not the case. What I am saying is that the economic development process is just a much more difficult to have pencil today than it used to be. And so as we kick off this discussion, it's not a simple solution, but what we can do is work together to create more shovel-ready land so we can eliminate as much as those other expenses that tend to come up that do kill project feasibility. Thank you.
Right. Well, I think I might be the newbie here. So I've been in Central Oregon for about 4 weeks. But one of the reasons that I'm here, y'all talked about your anchor, right? My husband and I spent about 12 years in Portland. We spent about 9 years out on the beautiful Oregon coast. But I said, if Pacific Power ever has an opening in Central Oregon, I'm going. So here we are. So thank you so much, REDI, for having me here. I am a board member. I'd love to talk to you about the work that REDI does. They do a great job. I've only been here 4 weeks, and Steve is like my bestie. So great work. Thank you all. So Pacific Power, just a little briefer here on Oregon Pacific Power. So we serve mostly rural Oregon. We have a very small portion of northeast Portland, but everywhere else is pretty much rural. So why I wanted to highlight on this slide, the big news here is on the bottom, there's some unique attributes for each of our regions. We have the Portland coastal region, we have sort of Eastern Oregon, we have Central Oregon, where we are now, and look at the bottom, high growth rate. So that's great for economic development. As we will see, maybe on the power side, Brad and I will be talking about some of those constraints and what we're doing about them so that we can continue to have that high growth rate, we can continue to serve your businesses and your expansions and keep those businesses here local. Next slide. Okay, so what are our drivers of load growth, at least from what we see as Pacific Power? We see commercial and industrial development. We just heard about available industrial land. I had a great conversation yesterday at lunch about commercial properties and land development in the region. It was fascinating. There's land out there. People want it. So we want to be able to serve it. That also drives load growth. Where we also have seen population growth. Hello, hi, I'm new. I've been here 4 weeks. Finding a house in Central Oregon, not exactly easy, right? So population growth. Public policy. Thank you for being here from the state. Some of your policies are great. Some of them quite challenging. Heat electrification. So we'll be talking, or you'll be hearing from one of the natural gas companies. So there has been sort of a changeover from natural gas to electricity. That also drives load growth. Technology, EVs. Who here drives an EV? Me. Yeah, I see some other hands in the room. That's also driving some of our load growth. And then AC adoption. So funny story, when we bought our house in Portland, no AC, right? Why would we need it? Who knows? Our furnace went out. We decided not to get a heat pump. And then that summer, we had about 12 straight days of 100 degrees. And we're like, why did we not put in AC? Moved to the coast. Really don't need it there, right? Well, there were a few days of like 95, 100 degrees. Luckily, that coastal breeze comes in and it cools everything down. When we were looking at houses here, I said, number one thing, I want air conditioning. We do have AC. I'm a little scared to turn it on, but we do have it. All right, next slide. Okay, so here is something just for the local region. Yes, it says Bend. I know I'm in Redmond. Oops, sorry. Central Oregon. This is really for the region more holistically. So we used to see sort of a peak summer megawatts. So that's MW megawatts. Utility people love to talk in acronyms. I will try not to. So we had a peak of about 175 to 180 megawatts. That's about 80% of the total max our system can handle. As we look forward, increases. What are those increases for? I think I'm not a math person. I'm not the finance guy. Definitely not a math person. But I think that was about a 30% or more growth. And all of those drivers that we discussed are what is driving that load growth in the region. Next slide. So this is the slide that Steve told me to cut. And I said, no, this is my punchline. So this is a list of projects that Pacific Power has planned or has completed from 2023 to 2032. This is everything that is planned to help combat and really be able to serve all of your businesses, the new businesses coming in, and Steve and Edco being able to recruit new businesses. So if you look over here, it's really small print. I try to get it all on one slide. There's substation projects. There's local transmission projects. Then there's major transmission. So here's my kind of call to all of you. So on this slide, there's a map. That map is showing where a new 500 kV line, so that's kilovolts, big transmission, think steel structures. They're kind of ugly. We know they're kind of ugly. But we have a route that's planned to bring in additional energy capacity to the region. There is a public meeting actually in Redmond next week. We are trying to solicit information, public input. Energy infrastructure, we know, has a lot of challenges. It's not very pretty. It can get in the way of things, but it's necessary. If you all want to grow your businesses, we want to recruit new businesses, it's necessary infrastructure. We would love to have your support or your comments, either at that public meeting. You can also come and see me, but all of the conversation I think that I will be discussing later as we get into questions is going to come back to this slide. This is what we are doing to support economic development in the region. Thanks.
Do I get a second intro, Roger? No, just go. Okay, we'll just go with it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brad Wilson, President and CEO of Central Electric Cooperative. I want to give you a little background on the cooperative. It is a not-for-profit electric utility formed in 1940 by 9 farmers. Today, we serve a little over 32,000 members with 40,000 accounts in the Central Oregon area. As you can see from the map, our service territory stretches from Willowdale in the north to nearly Hampton in the south, and from Hoodoo Ski Resort to IZ in the east. Covering about 5,300 square miles. We've got about 4,100 miles of power lines. And so this is the green represents Central Electric's area. Pink is served by Pacific Power, and yellow is the area that either utility could serve. Out of the 18 electric co-ops in Oregon, Central Electric is the largest by members, serving those accounts: agricultural, industrial, commercial, and residential. CEC also receives nearly all of its wholesale power from the Bonneville Power Administration, from the federal, that markets from the federal hydropower system, nearly 96% carbon-free resource. Next slide, please. At present, Central Electric has 4 main points of delivery from the Bonneville Power Administration, one of which, as you can see on the map, is in West Redmond. This point of delivery actually serves all of Central's customers in Redmond, Sisters, Madras, Prineville. So pretty much the entire northern part of our service territory is served by that point of delivery. For more than a decade, CEC has advocated for Bonneville Power to expand their infrastructure in Central Oregon. In late 2023, they finally announced expansion of the Ponderosa substation and the building of Bonanza substation. What that means for Central Electric is another 300 megawatts of capacity in the region, and also another point of delivery that provides us redundancy in our transmission system. We're halfway through a decade-long investment initiative, to increase capacity and reliability throughout our system. This includes upgrades of our transmission system, our distribution system, rebuilding and modernizing our substations, and planning for all the future growth that we see coming our way. Last year, we completed a transmission project in West Redmond, and that will increase capacity. And soon we will start work on the 2 substations labeled Cinder Butte and Hicks. And the next year, that will also provide more capacity in the Redmond area. Overall, CEC has been taking a proactive approach to looking at growth, planning for it, and implementing measures to meet it. Next slide, please. And I know Elisa deals with this too, and it's really talking about future power supply, resource adequacy. I know you're going to touch on it, Roger, in a little bit, but just a preview. This is on everybody's radar. Central Electric is a preference customer of BPA, so we're allowed access to the federal hydropower system. While this is a great resource For the region, it is finite. As the demand for energy increases, the assets of Bonneville are fixed. So as we look at overall supply and demand, as demand goes up and supply stays the same, what should we expect? Increasing costs. We have another issue with this federal hydropower system besides just the new energy demand, whether it's through new energy measures or electrification. We also are concerned about the continued calls for removal of the four lower Snake River dams. They generate nearly 3,000 megawatts during peak weather events. And so this is also critical when we start looking at long-term resource adequacy in the region, and one of our primary concerns. We're also working with PNGC, our generation and transmission cooperative, to build renewable resources, currently working on a 40 megawatt energy storage project with solar in the Central Oregon area. They've also secured 280 megawatts of wind and solar resources for its 25 members. These efforts to secure this long-term power supply help stabilize our rates, our overall costs, and help starting to answer some of the resource adequacy questions that we're seeing for us today. Thank you.
There was an issue with my slides. They were too busy, so to avoid giving you all a headache, we just bagged it, and I'm going to wing it, so bear with me. I'm Marcus, District Manager at Cascade Natural Gas here locally. I was just going to give you a high-level overview of what our operations look like. Cascade is owned by MDU Resources out of Bismarck, North Dakota. They own 4 companies that specialize in power generation and transmission and natural gas distribution. Cascade operates in Oregon and Washington. Here locally, we cover about 60,000 service connections in 4 counties, Jefferson, Crook, Deschutes, and northern Klamath County. We supply our gas is supplied primarily from British Columbia, Alberta, and to some extent the northern Rocky Mountain region of the US. We buy that gas from TransCanada, which owns and operates 2 large diameter, high pressure transmission lines just almost outside this compound. At each town that we serve, we have what we call a town border station. That's our tie-in to the high pressure lines where we reduce the pressure from TransCanada's almost 900 PSI. We knock that down to 300 PSI. And we also, at that point, we inject odorant into the natural gas stream. So you might not know that natural gas has no natural odor. That rotten egg smell that you smell, we actually put that in as a safety precaution because you wouldn't otherwise be able to detect a natural gas leak. From that point, we push the gas into town where it goes through a series of smaller regulator stations and it gets knocked down to 60 PSI. So in the streets, alleyways, even your service lines, the gas is roughly 60 PSI until it gets right up to your meter. At your meter, we regulate that down one more time to what we call delivery pressure, and that's just like a quarter pound, unless you have like a larger load at a business, a restaurant, or even your home, and we'll adjust according to your specific needs. From a personnel standpoint, the Bend District employs about 35 employees, broken up between a few office personnel and support staff, and then 2 bigger crews. The construction side, we have welders, equipment operators, utilities, the guys putting the pipes in the ground. And then on the service side, we have the techs that come out. If you have a gas emergency, there are first responders, pressure issue, leak, that kind of thing. But that's just kind of our operation at a high level. We'll talk more about some of the constraints that we face here with the rest of the panel.
Hey, how you guys doing? Patrick Murphy, TDS Telecom. You're a good-looking crowd. Just letting you know, I've been watching you, and just saying, you're good-looking for Redmond. How many Redmond folks here? Yeah, a lot of Redmond. How many Bend folks here? A lot of Bend folks. So that's a good-looking crowd for Bend and Redmond. That's a good thing. So anyway, I'm here to tell you about telecom. So when I started in the industry, telecom was telephone lines, and 25 plus years later, it's all about broadband. And so that's really what we're here to talk about. You can see down here in the lower right-hand portion of the screen, that's TDS's footprint in the blue. So we operate in roughly 31 states. We have 1.1 million access lines. But what we really want to talk about is Central Oregon. So those are the numbers I brought for you today. So as far as homes passed, we're about 136,000 homes passed throughout Central Oregon. We have 27,000 voice lines, 77,000 high-speed data. What you're really interested in, though, is the business. We provide business services right now to roughly about 6,000 businesses. How many of you represent a business? I suspect it's a few, right? How many of you have broadband at your business? A lot. How many of you have broadband at your home? Wow, there's some people who do not have broadband. That's surprising. So anyway, if you don't, come see me and we can talk about getting broadband to your home. So as far as products and services, pretty standard stuff. We offer high-speed internet, we offer voice, we offer Metro Ethernet. So if you are a business, you might want the Metro Ethernet because that's dedicated bandwidth just for you, and we can offer point-to-point services, point-to-multipoint services, all sorts of fun things. The communities we serve in Central Oregon, you can see that. It's pretty much everything along with the map. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, so as far as our roots in Central Oregon, they go deep. In 1955, Ben Broadband started under Ben Cable. They had 3 channels, so lots of choices, 3 channels. It grew from there. I joined Ben Broadband in 2012, and so I got to experience some of the old school stuff. And in 2014, TDS acquired Ben Broadband. And so TDS has actually been in the community for a very long time, but we kept the Ben Broadband name until just a couple years ago. So how many people knew that TDS had been in the community since 2014? Few, that's good. Okay, excellent. Sorry, go back to that slide, wasn't done. Anyway, so as far as we operate, a lot of people say, oh, you're the cable company. You just have coax, right? You're the cable company. We actually have what's called HFC, which is hybrid fiber cable. It means much of our network is already fiber, and anything new that we're putting in today, this is important to know, is fiber. So we do offer a lot of fiber to the prim, fiber to the home services in Bend, Redmond, and the surrounding areas today. So any thoughts on what the average speed was 10 years ago, broadband speed? 10 megs? 4 megs. Wow, you had bad broadband. Anybody else? 20. Getting close. 25 megs was the average speed, 25 megs. So what about the average today? Hopefully we have some customers out there. What are you getting at home? 1 gig, that's right, 1 gig. So that's pretty awesome. That's good progress. So as far as the future, is there still gas left in the engine? So what I can tell you in the coax, there's still gas left. We're looking at offering 2 and 3 gig here in the near future. So we're working on that, and we're not there yet. But across our fiber, there's plenty of gas left in the engine. Today, we can offer up to 8 gig. Our network is designed to offer 25 and designed to support 100 in the future. Why are we not doing 100 across our pond today? It's because it's not available, but it's designed to offer that when it is. All right, so as far as backhaul, this is important to businesses. Where do we interconnect? So today we interconnect in Seattle, Los Angeles, and Denver. That means we have 3 ways out. And so that's really important for a lot of businesses. They want to know, hey, are you single homed? We are not. We have 3 ways out, and we have multi-100 gig links to all those locations. All right, last slide. This is important. How can you help us? So if you're a building, call us early. If you call us early, we can cater to you exactly, hopefully, what it is that you need. We love to know about new developments. Joint trench, it's our best friend. We love to get into those joint trenches. If they get closed up and we don't get in, that means we have really high cost to build. And let us know what your unique business needs are. Chances are we do have a product that fits. And lastly, if we're not meeting your needs, it's super important to reach out and have a conversation because chances are maybe we can help. All right, thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. Jessica McClanahan. I'm the Director of Public Works and City Engineer for City of Redmond. Thanks for hanging with us through this whole panel. I'll try to make it relatively brief to bring us home here. So in Public Works at the City of Redmond, we're responsible primarily for planning, designing, building, and then operating and maintaining what we consider public services. This is water, wastewater, transportation, and parks. So the map that you see is a map of our city limits and some trends that we're seeing in growth in our community. The red dots signify residential growth, and you'll see that's largely on the west side of our city. And then the tan dots are commercial and industrial growth. And again, you'll see that's predominantly on the east side of our city. So our city is bisected largely by Highway 97 and the railroad, and some of those trends that you see in the residential and the industrial commercial reflect that physical barrier also that we have through our community. So as we look to expand and grow infrastructure, you can imagine needing to extend our services along the periphery of our community. On the west side of town, that includes the Helmholtz corridor, so extending water, wastewater, and roads in order to create more connectivity along that western part of our community. And then on the east side, it's also doing the same thing, extending our water, wastewater, and our roads predominantly along the Airport Way and 9th Street corridor. In addition, it's important for us to consider connectivity east to west. So we're working with our partner agencies to figure out ways in which we can bridge the gap over the highway or the railroad and increase that connectivity in our community. And we also want to increase connectivity to our neighboring communities. So being an economic hub that Redmond is, we understand it needs to be easy to get in and out of our community, and a lot of folks travel along Highway 97, either from Bend up north here into Redmond or from Madras, Sisters, and Prineville. And so the investments into our state highway system, primarily in this case Highway 97 and Highway 126, are really important such that our community remains accessible and that we have services that we can have to provide for growing businesses. Next slide, please. So some of the ways in which the city is proactively planning for this growth include some major investments in our capital improvement program as well in other city-owned facilities. The first of which here is our Redmond Wetland Complex, which is our new wastewater treatment plant. It's located on the northwest part of town, so that's the upper left-hand dot that you see on this map. It's an investment of about $83 million and will give us capacity to treat all of the water and wastewater that we have for 20 plus years to come. Additionally, the city is getting close to completing a new police station with an investment of $49 million. This is slated to be complete later this summer. And as we continue to grow as a community, we want to do so safely. And so having those services available to us is also really important. The airport terminal expansion, some of you may travel in and out of that airport to do business. As that continues to grow, we are increasing the capacity of that airport by expanding the holding areas and increasing the number of gates. So again, this is just an investment to make sure that Redmond is accessible and easy for folks to come and do business. The East Side Arterial Corridor, which is located pretty near to where we actually are right now, it begins at the airport and Veterans three-way stop, and it's a new roadway up to Highway 126, and then improvements on Northeast 9th Street. So this is an important connection because what it does is really create that eastern beltway loop from the U Avenue interchange at the southern end of our town, around through these industrial lands, and then up north. Construction is happening right now, so if you drive out to the north, you may see it in the area where the old Juniper Golf Course is. And the anticipated completion is by 2028, so that'll be a great new route here very shortly to serve a lot of lands that have development potential here on the east side. As we move into the water realm, we're currently constructing our 9th water well, and similar to our wastewater treatment plant expansion, this ensures that we have the ability to pump enough groundwater for the next decade or two. So it's proactively looking at how we can invest in infrastructure today to meet the growing demand that we know is out there. I know in this room, a lot of us probably don't think about parks, but that is also a really important part of our infrastructure, and it speaks to the livability of our community and why we're attractive to come and both live and work and do business here. So we have a large park improvement project in our Central Dry Canyon for about $7 million. That's an exciting improvement for our community as well. And then the dots in blue aren't necessarily city-led projects, but they are pretty key growth projects in our community that I wanted to highlight. The first is about 700 acres of land in the southern part of Redmond. It's that large blue dot at the bottom of the screen, and it's zoned for large lot industrial. So the city is working proactively with the Department of State Lands, who owns that tract, to look at how we can make those sites more shovel-ready in terms of having needed infrastructure brought to that area so that those lands can develop and grow. Additionally, the Core 3 facility is located on the east side of town. It's that blue dot east on the map there. And it is the Central Oregon, let's see if I can get this, REDI, resilient, I don't have it down, but it is, the intent is for emergency response and training as, oh, thank you. I should have looked that way. The intent of that is to have emergency and response training, as well as ultimately be a house for state government if there's a catastrophic event that does happen west of the Cascades and government needs to move over here to the east. So that's an important reason also to really highlight our facilities and our infrastructure growing on the east side of town. And then finally, St. Charles is expanding here in town, and we're excited for that as well, again, so that we have the safety and healthcare and services that we need for our community to grow and thrive. So that is my summary of the City of Redmond's infrastructure, and if there's any questions, I welcome them after the fact, and if I'm walking around, I'd be happy to talk and meet with any of you. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jessica, and our other panelists for that overview. We don't have any, we've answered all the questions, I think, already. So, yeah. Well, let's maybe just come back to that resource adequacy. You've touched on, definitely everybody's touched a little bit on this, and what improvements and investments need to be made to do that. So, well, maybe no specific order. I'll let you guys kind of jump in as you have information. So. At least I'm looking at you first.
Oh, great. Well, thanks. So Brad touched on the need for additional generation. I mean, Pacific Power's in the same place. We are a multi-state utility. We're also vertically integrated, which essentially means we own most of our own generation, but we also make market purchases and do PPAs, which is a power purchase agreement. Again, talking you in acronyms, try not to do that. But we just released our Integrated Resource Plan, or our IRP. And that is basically the planning document that shows us where our resource shortfalls are. And it is a fancy computer model that also takes into consideration public policy. We're a multi-state utility. All of our states like to do things differently. So the Oregon model also included the CEP, which is the Clean Energy Plan for the state of Oregon, and optimized it, showed us what we need. We need some serious generation resources. Most of those need to be renewable. Renewable resources are a wonderful addition to our slate of resources, but they are intermittent, which means they're not always on. So really what we are looking at is we need something that is base load, non-emitting, which basically means it can be on at any time, but it cannot produce emissions. So we are doing some test cases outside of the state of Oregon, looking at new nuclear technology. We are also looking at other types of technology like batteries. We really need batteries to come up to speed, because that is going to be a huge resource for utilities when you can store the intermittent resource in a battery and then feed it on the grid when you need it. So that's just a little taste of kind of where we are at with resource adequacy. We're not there. We definitely have shortfalls. We need technology to catch up, but we are pursuing some pretty interesting opportunities as we move forward.
Thanks, Elisa. Brad, you want to hit a little bit more about some of the projects you mentioned, like the Bonanza substation?
Thank you, Lisa. She covered a lot, really, when we start talking about the electric industry. We're kind of all in the same boat, really looking long term. Where's our power supply going to come from? Obviously, the regulatory position in Oregon is carbon-free resources, and so that's where everybody's really lending to. On top of the resource development with some battery storage in Central Oregon, we've had multiple PPAs with, power purchase agreements with other renewable projects. But really, the Bonanza expansion of Ponderosa and the Bonanza substation, I think, are critical for our region. Not only are we talking about added capacity to the Central Oregon region, but it also, the Bonanza will eventually be the largest substation in Central Oregon. It's really being built for massive amount. We're talking gigawatts worth of renewables to interconnect with and get on the grid. So very important. I'm glad that Bonneville is moving forward with that. We anticipate hopefully by 2030 or thereabouts that we'll have that online.
Perfect. Yeah, you want to?
Just as a representative of the natural gas industry, I do volunteer natural gas to remain a critical baseload supply of energy. Temporarily, I understand. I'd like to focus on Redmond. If we could go back one slide in Jessica's deck, if it's possible. It's really hard as a regulated utility for us to make investments in future growth because the rate recovery process is almost impossible. It's not fair to existing customers to try and forecast what's going to happen, in Bend or Prineville for people in Redmond to pay for, right? So we're kind of constantly chasing growth. Right now, we have a project to extend high pressure in Redmond from basically in front of Redmond High School out Highland to Northwest 35th, which will feed all of that area in red and really shore up all of Redmond. Some issues that we have is that the farther you get away from our supply, which is the Trans-Canada pipeline on the east side of town, the more pressure issues we have, the further west we get. So before wintertime, we plan to have this project installed. That'll reinforce that whole area in red. And then our next project that we're looking at is extending high pressure down south to that large, 700 acre industrial area. So our short-term plan, our planning is relatively short-term in that regard, but that's a perfect infographic for what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jessica. We can all kind of play off of that. So, Patrick, might be on the same tone here of looking at that map. Where do you find bottlenecks and what your resource adequacy is here in Redmond?
Yeah, sure. I would sort of piggyback on the growth piece. It's the best thing for us and the hardest thing for us to do well. Just as an example, we've in the last 5 years we've invested about $125 million, and the bulk of that goes towards growth. It's building new infrastructure and making sure that our pipes don't get congested, and those are those broadband pipes that you guys rely on. And the growth is tough for us as well when it comes to being able to perform that maintenance, because internet is no longer a 9 to 5 sort of thing. Even for businesses, it's now 24/7. And so it used to be that we could take our network down to expand, and now we have to be able to facilitate keeping it up and expanding at the same time.
Okay. I think, Jessica, you did a great job of kind of outlining what the city's projects are and costs and so forth associated with it. So, Dan, what does this all look like for you and the work that you do in trying to deliver served properties?
We might need to hire a few brokers in Redmond. We don't do utility extensions, so I'm not sure how much I can comment to where we need infrastructure and that sort of thing. I think we can it comes back to for me and my business, it comes back to meeting supply and demand, right, and trying to put those two together. And when you have low vacancies and when people come and say, "Hey, I need this," and you don't have that available. Our job is to try to match that up, and so people make concessions, right? People who need a 4,000 square foot space, but that's not available, they might live with 3,000 or they might live with 5,000, and that's the type of thing we've been dealing with, is just trying to find the product to meet the demand.
Is that resource adequacy something that you find as an impediment in selling properties? Or is that further down the line as far as the transaction that you're normally involved with.
Well, if for somebody who's going to develop property, it definitely is. It definitely comes into play, no doubt.
Great. All right, well, we'll move on for a couple more questions here. You're all working in very highly regulated industries. Dan, your industry perhaps more accepted on that, but how is the current state and local, maybe even federal regulatory environment impacting your organization's ability to accommodate new and growing businesses?
Am I going to go first again? Well, as a utility, and I'm sure Brad will echo this as well, we like certainty. And unfortunately, in public policy, certainty happens maybe for like 2 years, and then people are back in a re-election cycle, or things change, and we're back to uncertainty. So I would say from the regulated industry perspective, we want consistent policy. Just tell us what the policy is, and we will go and do what we need to do to meet that policy. So when there's big federal change and then the local change all happens at the same time, it really puts us in a place of inability to move projects forward. And I think what we're hearing is we need projects to move forward because Redmond is growing, Central Oregon is growing. That is wonderful. We need some certainty on the regulatory side so that we can make the investments we need to make sure that we can meet the demand at the local level. So for us, it's all about certainty, and the regulatory environment, when there is uncertainty, just puts us in a really challenging position.
Brad smiling.
Thank you, Roger. Much like Elisa, this is one of the primary things we deal with when we start looking at large growth or rapid growth that we're seeing in West Redmond. I mentioned a transmission line earlier to this. I'm really talking about public land, as most of 55% of our service territory is public or federal lands. We have infrastructure that crosses those. The permitting process for, and Elise, I know it's been much longer for Central, but you're talking about 2 or 3 years just to get a permitting to approval to build a new line across a section of public land. Now, this may be a 10-mile line with 3 poles going through a parcel of BLM, but yet it will take us years to get a permit to actually build that line. So that's one of the regulatory things we face. Outside I'm not going to comment much on the renewable portfolio standards. We meet those in terms of the state of Oregon, although I would mention the push for electrification for all utilities is driving up power costs. It is, because you're having to replace baseload fossil fuel generation with renewables. They're intermittent. You have to have a load or a generation source behind that to firm that up. And so in essence, you're almost double building your generation sources. So something to be aware of. The only other item I'd bring up is kind of local and state regulations, whether this was in cities, counties. Part of the challenge we face is forced undergrounding of utilities, relocation of facilities, understanding that a lot of our infrastructure sits within right-of-ways in counties and cities. And so those are additional costs, additional regulations, things that we have to deal with on a case-by-case basis as everybody is expanding. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Brad. Marcus, you don't have any nothing
no
on that front for you.
I could piggyback off of Lisa and Brad. Natural gas is just it's a very highly regulated industry, just based on the nature of the commodity, the hazardous nature of the commodity. What we're seeing in state and regionally, just that push for electrification and decarbonization is extra challenging. My peers on the electric side would both agree that fully electrifying at this point would be impossible. The infrastructure just doesn't exist to switch from 1 BTU of natural gas to the equivalent watt or kilowatt load on the power side. It's just not possible. We hired a polling firm in 2023 to survey registered voters in Deschutes County. 71% of the respondents said that they had a favorable opinion of natural gas and as a preferred energy source in their home and business. And 86% of respondents said they wanted to retain the right to choose their energy sources. So I understand the push towards electrification and decarbonization, but I think that from our perspective, we want our customers to have the ability to choose more than anything.
Sense. All right. Well, Jessica, you are the regulatory entity, but you also are working a framework within the state and federal as well.
Yeah, that's correct. I think maybe we're more fortunate than some others here that I'm listening to right now in terms of the rate of change in which regulations may be affecting us. So, from a water and wastewater and transportation side of things, those have been around for a while, those technologies. And so, we're fortunate that we live within regulations. We always have, we always will. And our life really isn't any different today with that. And it's really just our job to keep serving our community, making sure that we have safe and reliable infrastructure. So I feel for some of you who are having to deal with all of the rapid change.
What about telecom and broadband?
There's a bit of regulation. I'll give you two answers. One is it's just part and parcel with us doing business with cities, and some of it's very expensive. The permitting, the building, all of that stuff happens. At the federal level, we also have regulation, but I'll give you a softer answer too that might be more relevant or personal. Many of us know folks that are lower income and struggling, and we happen to have an opportunity for a period of time where there was a subsidy that allowed us to provide broadband to a lot of those folks at a subsidized rate. That got pulled, and as a company, TDS had to make a decision. Or were we going to just say, hey, your price goes up, or you don't get the service? And so as a company, we decided to kind of eat what we were getting from the government on that side and continue to offer the subsidized service. So that was an area where it sort of hurt our pocketbook, but we saw the benefit from helping out those customers. So we still have that service today for folks.
Great. Well, maybe that's a nice segue into a final question for the panel. Maybe we'll open up for a few questions from the audience. But have there been any recent lessons learned or new innovation that's helped you serve your business customers better? And maybe an example or two. Jessica, how about you?
Sure, I'll take that one first. I think a lesson, at least that I've learned over the past couple years being here in this position in Redmond, is the ability to need to phase large improvements. And so a key factor that we've been focusing on as part of our larger master plan and growth planning include finding key trigger points in which infrastructure really needs to be there so we can try to better moderate that overall investment that's needed over time. Some of the ways in which we're kind of leveraging some of those things today include utilizing progressive design build contracting mechanisms for our East Side Arterial, for example. So that's something that allows us to a lot of flexibility in phasing and the ability to go fast when we need to, but the ability to pause and off ramp also when we need to. And then also, I think I'd be remiss to not mention our Redmond Wetlands Complex as a really great example of a needed expansion of our facility, but one that doesn't need to be completely expanded for hundreds of thousands of people today, because it's a system that allows us to very efficiently and easily expand by adding additional treatment lagoons in the future.
Great example. Anybody else on this front?
Yeah, I think some of the lessons that have been learned is that when you are looking at project feasibility, you have to get a team involved. You know, if you're going to attack some of those feasibility challenges, you do that with local incentives. You do that with state incentives. You do that by looking for property that have economic incentives. There are mechanisms in place to help with some of those developments. And so if you can get a good team, work with the city, and start that process early, it certainly can combat that.
Roger, I might add. Quite a few things that we've learned in terms, or continuing to learn. It's really about being flexible and nimble. Everybody thinks of an electric utility as this stale giant that just sits in the room. But really, when we look at the demographics changing in Central Oregon, it's the way we communicate with them about all sorts of information. The second one that I think is really important, and this is, if I have any message to economic development here, Central has made a concerted effort to get people in the, whether it's on the REDI board or somewhere in the economic development realm. So we understand where development is likely to occur. We can start planning for that. And my last word for everybody is, and I can't remember who said it first, if you're planning development, whether it's property, whether it's anything, contact your utility providers early on in the process. That gives us valuable time to help plan with you and not have to plan after. So thank you.
I have a lessons learned, and probably some of you are part of this. I don't know if you know, but in Central Oregon, we have a high rate of work from home. That's been there for years and years and years. Probably the last 10 years, we were roughly at like 15% 10 years ago when it wasn't even a thing. And now we're well above that number. But the lesson we learned from that was when the pandemic hit in the rest of the country, we were like, oh, we just need to do it like Central Oregon. So one cool thing that happened is we knew that we had to up the bandwidth everywhere. And so you guys fed into that. So that was a good lesson learned for us.
Patrick, we were discussing before, it sounds like you've had some, or Marcus, we've had some innovations too on the gas side.
Yeah, we're responding to the push towards renewables ourselves. We're about to break ground on a renewable natural gas facility at the landfill in Bend on Knott Road. Anyone who's been there might remember the giant flare stack in the center of the landfill. The landfill has a series of wells where they capture the methane that's generated from the decomposing garbage, pipe it around the system or around the landfill into that flare. We're going to build a compressor station, capture that gas, pump it up to that 300 psi transmission pressure that I talked about, and put it into our South Bend border station. We have 3 RNG plants operational in Washington. This will be the first in Oregon. We have a pilot program that's going to kick off this summer in Bend at 24 sites where we're going to install hybrid heat pumps. It's a combo gas-electric heat pump just so we can study the efficiency of both and understand how gas interacts with essentially the gas component operates, below a certain temperature threshold, and then electric takes over after that. We have 2 thermal energy networks going in Washington right now, one at the Bellingham Technical College and one at the State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. And then Bend has also been identified as a location for a blended hydrogen program where we'll actually put hydrogen into the natural gas stream. So we're responding to the changing regulatory environment, as best we can.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Marcus. Well, I think that's probably come to the conclusion of our prepared. Do we have any questions from the audience? So we probably got time for 1 or 2, maybe. Any zingers out there? Looks like we've got one way in the back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Considering that all of us have a cell phone that was given to us from a vision by Nikola Tesla over 100 years ago, has there been any discussion of reviewing some of his plans from Wardenclyffe, where he was able to power homes 26 miles outside of his one temporary tower that was very renewable and using the Earth's magnetic field? Have there been any discussions about reviewing some of those plans from 100 years ago?
I'll take that one. I have no clue.
Wow. Well, that is a zinger. That is a question I have not ever gotten in my 15 years working at an electric utility. So thanks for that. No, I am not aware of that. However, kind of to echo the last question, lessons learned, we're always open to hearing customer feedback and new and innovative ideas. So let's talk later.
All right. Anybody else can be venture on that one? John.
I've got a question, if I may. Talk to me about nuclear. So I know other states are moving faster than Oregon. Today's technology is very different than what we had in the 80s, whether we're considering what happened in the East or up on the Columbia River. What do we know? What are the opportunities? And then since we have a generation gap that seems to be maybe fitting the renewable portfolio, at least to some degree.
Yeah, thanks, John. Pacificor, which is a 6-state utility, so we're under a larger umbrella. We do have a nuclear site in Wyoming, which is interesting. So Wyoming's kind of open for business for all technologies. They are happy to engage with us on all kinds of opportunities. So it's actually located at a site of a current coal-fired facility. So we are looking at kind of transitioning not only the workforce, but the technology. So as I mentioned, there's a bunch of different state policies around renewable energy. Load growth is a real thing. And we need to match the state policy, which says we need baseload non-emitting with a new technology. That, I think, an answer, not the answer, but an answer is nuclear. And it is safer. It is different technology than what used to be kind of the standard large facilities that you've probably seen, the Trojan plant that was owned by Portland General Electric. The technology is very different, and different states are taking different approaches. The state of Oregon right now, it's a no-go. The state of Washington's looking at small modular facilities, which are like real tiny, but they do actually serve quite a good load base. So nuclear is definitely in the mix, at least for Pacific Power's perspective. We do have a test site up in Wyoming. We're going to see how it goes and see how it integrates, see how the technology advances. But I think we're very hopeful on that technology.
John, I would echo that in terms of PNGC has 25 members, so we cover 7 states, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and we're available to look at this SMR, small modular reactors. I think that's a great option. Elisa covered on it. Until something within the state of Oregon changes, we're not going to see those developed actually in the state, but with some options outside the state to import the power, I think it's a viable resource. One thing that I would consider overall is how do we get the generation locally? And this is kind of the transmission overhaul or the need for transmission lines. One of the solutions is to put the generation closer to the load center. So I think this is always a viable option. I don't know that Oregon will ever get there, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brad. I think many people don't realize that while we're a growing area, we don't generate much power. More on the renewable side recently, but our base load really comes from outside the area. And that includes natural gas. Thankfully, that pipeline is not constrained right now, but it is also imported. We don't have those resources here. Yeah. Great question. Maybe one last question and we'll wrap up. Yeah.
So last year we heard about AI and the impact of AI on the network and all of that, and maybe what's that look like for what our plans are as far as increasing our electrical grid and other potential energy like thermal and hydrogen.
So I think there's always a concern when we start talking about development or development within the city of Redmond or anything here regionally. Data centers or AI are kind of their own conversation. They're well outside of any anticipated normal growth that the utilities are normally planning in their 20-year. They just kind of pop up. But I think all of this has to do with our resource adequacy, how we're looking at what our long-term needs are, what kind of viable generation is in the market or being developed. And it's just going to be continued investment by the utilities to try to meet this demand that comes up. What I have seen, most of you are probably aware, is you're actually now seeing data center participation in the building of resources, right? They're really moving. And that's really been one of the barriers when we go back to nuclear is the cost per megawatt hour, which is nearly double what you would pay for hydro resources or something else. So with the capital improvements from the large tech companies, and possible investment in resources, then I think we can solve the problem.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add other than, AI is really quite a unique beast. And the AI data centers and servers are much larger energy users. So there is a need for additional resources. And like Brad was mentioning, a lot of the companies that you can think of that are using AI or developing AI are kind of part of that generation resource adequacy conversation, which is not something I think we had engagement on even 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it's coming along. I think it's a solvable problem. But next time you use ChatGPT for something, think about it.
So many things drive energy use that aren't very obvious out there. Well, panelists, thanks so much for your great information, insights, and answering some softball and some hardball questions out there. So thank you again.
Okay, so we want to give a huge shout out to our moderator, that's Roger Lee, and the panelists, Denkamp, Elisa Dunlap, Brad Wilson, Marcus McCloskey, Patrick Murphy, and Jessica McClanahan for their wealth of information about setting the stage for Redmond's economic boom. And also thank you to the presenters, Michael Held and Steve Curley. Clap again. There we go. Indeed, being business friendly is being business ready by investing in needed infrastructure in the region. We also want to give a shout out to all of the general sponsors who support this annual luncheon, and for REDI to continue its efforts in creating business prosperity in Redmond. Today's title sponsors are Central Oregon Community College, Basics, and Basics. We know they're two different things. Also, the panel sponsor is Summit Bank. Presenting sponsors, Pacific Power and Compass Commercial Real Estate Services. And our supporting sponsors, Mid-Oregon Personnel, Miller Lumber, TDS, Skanska. I butchered it. I'm sorry, guys. I even checked with them earlier to make sure I was doing it right. That's okay. Those guys over there. And Redmond Airport, as well as BBSI. There's only one more page. I'm just trying to get to it. All right, and the venue. Thank you to the Deschutes County Fair and Expo for generously providing our beautiful venue today. And another shout out for Hand in Hand Productions. They're the ones that help put on the productions, as well as Flip Flop Sounds. And Tim Park Photography. I saw him running around here taking pictures of everybody. And the food, The food. Thank you to Blue Bite Catering and Amber Wilson of Boss Mortgage for those little decadent desserts we had. See, you didn't eat the hat, right? My wife is sitting over there. She's like, here, don't eat the hat. Okay, thanks. And finally, a proud media sponsor, Central Oregon Daily News. We are proud to help with this every year. And we're proud to return as the media and broadcasting partners with REDI to host today's event. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again in 2026 for the annual luncheon.